I always ask you guys to comment on which players you guys are most intrigued by in the draft class and who you guys want a video on. One of the most commented players that you guys have asked for is Kentucky cornerback Andru Phillips, a Senior Bowl standout and a guy who is slowly but surely rising up draft boards and a player who some people have said could be a round 1 pick. Where does he ultimately get selected in the 2024 NFL Draft? That is what we will be talking about in today's video. But hey guys, if you guys are new to the channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment, let me know which players you guys are interested in, and without further ado, let's take a closer look at Andru Phillips. Phillips is an interesting case, because when you look at the numbers, he hasn't been super productive for Kentucky. Outside of 2023, he didn't see the field very much. He has 0 interceptions in his collegiate career, and on top of that, he allowed quite a few plays that I wasn't in love with. He allowed 438 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2023, and he hasn't been super productive. However, the Senior Bowl was a big moment for him in his development. He showed that despite not being the biggest guy in the world, he could match up with anyone, and he had some incredibly impressive reps against Johnny Wilson, and he's been slowly and surely moving up draft boards for a lot of people. Phillips is a very smart corner. In off-man coverage and in zone coverage, this is where I was thoroughly impressed by what he was able to do. He had good instincts, read the play perfectly, and he was able to buy himself just enough time to make a play. I think those were his most impressive reps at Kentucky, and I think his zone coverage reps are where he thrives, but off-man as well, I think he did a really good job. Phillips is a fluid mover as well. He has flexible hips, and he has some pretty solid abilities in short yardage situations. He is reactive and can make some quick decisions and stop and go on a dime. He moves pretty well, which is yet another area of his that I think is pretty solid. Another thing I really liked about Phillips was that he was like a Swiss Army knife for the Wildcats defense. They lined him up everywhere on the defensive side of the football, whether it was outside, in the slot. It didn't really matter where Phillips played because he did a very nice job of playing with control wherever he was. He's a very calm, cool, and collected corner, and I appreciate that about him. Another thing Phillips does well is he's solid in run support. He comes downhill, makes quick decisions, and shows some upside. I would like to see him improve angles from time to time because he has some missed tackles in the backfield, but I do love when a cornerback shows a willingness to come downhill and defend the run, and Phillips does that. In terms of speed, it is kind of underwhelming for me in Phillips' case. It isn't bad, and he shows some solid initial burst, but he was beat down the field, and he didn't necessarily possess the recovery speed that I think is ideal for a starting corner at the next level. His man coverage abilities are a bit up and down as a result. He moves his hips well, he's a fluid mover, but his speed is questionable, and it causes some concerns for me. On top of that, I know many people loved the reps against Johnny Wilson, but I don't think that's a very good gauge of who he is, because there were other times where a bigger, more physical receiver would just catch the ball right over his head. He didn't react very well, so I don't really know what to make of that, but he did struggle against bigger receivers, and the ball could just be thrown right over him at times. He also had some missed tackles in the open field. He's not the strongest player in the world, and he was pushed around at times. He would take poor angles, and it felt like he was always looking for a big hit or trying to punch the ball loose, and I want to see him be a bit more fundamentally sound in terms of his tackling. Andru Phillips is generating a ton of buzz entering the NFL Draft, and I've got to be honest, I don't quite understand it. I get that he has high upside in zone and off-man coverage, but he isn't super fast, he isn't super strong, he isn't super big. He's just kind of in the middle of all those categories for me, which leaves me stuck. I know a lot of people like him, and he has some tools I like. I think he could be a moldable piece, but he's my number 14 corner. I don't understand why people are throwing him in their top 10. He's just not there for me. Phillips is a zone cover guy, I think. He has good instincts and some really good reaction time. He's likely to get beat over the top at times, and in Kentucky, I think in zone coverage is where we saw Phillips thrive. He He could be a solid piece in a heavy zone defense, and I think that's where he's going to fit best in the NFL. My comparison for Andru Phillips is Ronald Darby. Darby's been solid in the league. He's never been an elite corner, but he's had some solid years in the league. He hasn't ever been super productive, but he's been a versatile piece in the secondary. You can move him around. Maybe not the most fast, but there's a lot of similarities there between Darby and Phillips. I don't think Phillips is ever going to be a superstar, but I could see him being a solid corner, similar to what Darby's been in his career. Andru Phillips is flying up draft boards. He has some tools that are interesting, but I don't necessarily see him as an elite guy. Personally, I wouldn't take him until the 4th round at the earliest, but ultimately, with all the buzz, I believe that Andru Phillips will be a 2nd round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft.